Okay, Louise, you can actually start.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health in Your Neighborhood. And please say hello to my co-host, Pastor Bruce Wall. Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning, Deacon Louise. It's great to hear you this morning. And I feel so privileged to be on this broadcast with you and to be your partner in broadcasting. And you can tell that when I make a statement like that, I'm very sincere. I'm not telling you a lie or anything. I'm very sincere with what I'm saying.
Yes.
You see the fingers crossed?
But since you are a Baptist pastor, probably don't use your fingers as anything important.
Well, my fingers were crossed. When someone tells you that they're telling you the truth and they cross their fingers, it means that they're not telling you the truth. But but that's beside the point. I'll be serious. So you had asked me a little bit earlier what was on my mind, what was on my heart, what I would like to talk about. And I would like to ask you, I know what I would like to talk about, but I'd also like to know what is it that you would like to talk about, because it is your broadcast. I don't want to take over your broadcast and then have you talk about me when you get off the phone.
No, I wouldn't be talking about you. I'd be talking with you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I appreciate that.
Okay.
So do you have anything that you want to put on the table, or do you want me to prepare the meal?
I just want to talk about how important last weekend was to you, because you had something on Boston Praise Radio Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was amazing.
Right. You know, something I found that to be fascinating, that we were actually doing the broadcast. We were actually doing the broadcast, and we did Thursday night, which was Monday, Thursday. We had a communion service.
Right.
On that Friday, we had the Pastor Greaves was preaching, and that was the
Good Friday.
Good Friday, yeah. Good Friday. Why couldn't I pull that? And then on Sunday was Resurrection Sunday. So I said to Sweet Lamb on Thursday evening when we were in the studio. Eric wasn't here. He was home sleeping. But we were in the studio, and I said to Sweet Lamb, the next year, when I say, let's do Thursday, let's do Friday, let's do Sunday, and then Pastor Hobbs's dad passed. And so so that meant that we were going to be involved on Saturday, going to a funeral.
Yes.
That was in my opinion, that was 4 intense days, because how I planned. I want things to be all detailed, written out, so we all know what we're doing. It was, Louise, it was a lot. And I was hoping that I could have identified and talked one of our renowned pastors to preach on Resurrection Sunday, so that I could just sit back and enjoy the service. But no, they wanted the old man to preach. And so after the service, after the sermon, I just went home and I just knocked out and put my feet up and said, thank you, God, for getting me through that week. It was a full week.
Oh, well, I want to tell you that the reason I mentioned Saturday when I talked about Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was because I knew about Pastor Hobbs' father.
Yeah.
I had actually met him.
Yeah.
I had taken Pastor Hobbs to Haverhill one time. I drove him there when I was driving, and I met his mother and his father. They were extremely interesting people.
Well, I wanted to drive Pastor Hobbs to Haverhill, but every time I said, Pastor Hobbs, I'll be more than willing to drive you to Haverhill, Eric would say, no, I would like to have the privilege of doing it. So Eric just loves to go to Haverhill, and I just never really, that was the first time that I was actually in Haverhill for the funeral. I think it may have been Eric's 10th time being in Haverhill because he would drive past the Hobbs there all the time. But something really amazing, when I went to the homegoing service, when Karen and I pulled up, we were looking for the church. And as we drove by the church, I said, that cannot be the church, because there was a line of people waiting to get into the wake.
Mhm.
And they were predominantly white. So I said, either we have the wrong address or we have the right address, but they're having two services at the same time. So we pulled into a parking lot. Again, the line went up the stairs, down the front stairs, and on the sidewalk. And Karen couldn't stand in anything like that. So I decided to go in and scout the place out. So I stayed in line for an exhausting amount of time. And by the time I got up the stairs into the church, then up the first flight of stairs in the church, the officials came down and said, "We're sorry, the service has to start. We can't let anybody else up." So I never even made it up.
Wow.
So I went back to the car and got Karen. And I said, "Karen, you will never be able to go up the main stairs to the church and then the 2 flights of stairs to get into the sanctuary. You'll never be able to do it." So they had set up in the basement a TV and speakers, and a lot of the people who were old like me, we all sat downstairs and watched the service. And it was amazing. Pastor Hobbs's family is huge.
Yes.
And the grandchildren got up at one time and formed a choir, and they sang. And I said, "Pastor Hobbs, I didn't see you." He said, "No, none of my generation got up. These were all the grandchildren." They filled the entire front of the church, and it was a interesting funeral. I didn't bother go to the gravesite because I had to get Karen back, and I had to get back because I had to preach on Sunday morning. But Saturday was a full day. And when my wife had me in the automobile, she started thinking of all the errands that she wanted to run because I had the credit card. So that's what I did for the rest of the day.
Well, that was interesting, but I think that it's important for you to have appreciated Pastor Hobbs' father, because Haverhill is predominantly white people, and the church always had a lot of white people in it. So that was a good thing. It's too bad that you and Pastor Karen couldn't have gone up to the sanctuary sooner. But I'm sure that you did enjoy what happened, what was presented in the basement.
Right. It was very good, and the service was a tremendous homegoing experience for his dad. I also asked Pastor Hobbs this question when I looked at the coffin. On top of the coffin, if I'm correct, there were 3 things. 1, there was an American flag.
Mm-hmm.
2, there were flowers, and 3, there was a hat.
Mm.
I knew what that hat meant because his dad would always be dressed up and he wore a hat.
Always, yes.
So that hat was the symbol. I understood that. And I scratched my head and I said, his dad had to be in the service because that flag, that's why that flag is there.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he told me. And, the way that Pastor Hobbs dresses, that's a reflection of his dad and his mom, because people kept mentioning in the statements about him and her that they were always impeccably dressed. And again, when we see Pastor Hobbs, it could be snowing out, and Pastor Hobbs has on a bow tie, a white shirt, a suit, and regular shoes and no boots because of his past and his symbolism. So those are my only observations of the funeral. But there was something
So,
else that I had asked Eric about, and I know Eric is going to feel that he should have signed on once we start talking about this, because I know him better than he knows himself. So the shooting in Louisville, Kentucky,
oh, wow.
right?
Terrible, terrible.
So yesterday they released the videos, and I saw a couple of them. The story of the police officer who had just joined the force, he was just sworn in so many
Yes,
days before this took place, right?
right.
And so he's rushing up the stairs, and he's shot in his head, and he's still in the hospital. They don't know if he's going to make it, but that was his second or third day on the force. Oh,
Right.
10, you say 10? Eric says 10. I'll go with it because it's Eric. I will check him later. But he says 10 days. That to me is so sad.
Yes, very
Um,
sad. It
you
was
know,
a young officer too.
yeah, the young officer. And
Mhm.
you see some officers who do not respect people and are pushing them around and yelling at them. But then you see something like this, where these
Mhm.
officers responded quickly to save the lives of people. And you could hear the gunfire of the individual who was shooting up the people in the bank. You can hear that gunfire. And every time the gun went off, I asked myself the question, is that person shooting another person? That was horrific, Louise.
Yes, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And the people in the community that were speaking on the television system, the one of the men said that he knew two of the people who had been killed, and
Right,
he was very upset because they were personal friends.
right. He was upset, but he was also very emotional. And
Yes, yeah,
then the news commentators and reporters were going to various congressional leaders and people and asking questions on both sides of the question. What are we going to do? Here's another mass shooting, another mass shooting. What are we going to do? And it's the same mantra, it's the same verbiage,
mhm,
it's the same people saying the same things. And then I struggle with having this happen, and I'm asking myself the question: why are the Republicans so stuck with one message? Why are they so stuck? Why are they not willing to work across the aisle with some of the Democrats and together hone and shape a new upgraded policy regarding gun use or gun purchases or background checks? I don't know the answer because I don't own a gun. I've just been listening to other people. Maybe if I owned a gun, I might feel differently, but not owning a gun, not having one in my hand, I just don't see the need for why people need the type of assault weapons that they're using. And one person, I think somebody on the radio was talking last night when I was driving home, and they said that there's a move afoot for some people to say that the photos of the impact of the guns, the bullets on the bodies of these children at the schools, that people should see the impact of those shootings on a young child's body. I wouldn't want to see anything like
mhm,
that.
mhm.
But you know yourself the impact of a close range shooting of a child. Um, that would be too horrific, correct?
That would be horrible because we're talking about an AR-15 rifle. We're talking about a rifle
Mhm.
that's quite long, and it makes a mess of the body of a child as compared to the indication of the bullets in an adult.
Right, in a
It,
nine
it
millimeter.
Yes, it's a horrible idea. It's just a horrible thing. And there should be some kind of situation being developed and planned. But that particular day, all they could talk about was the loss of those wonderful people and how badly people around them felt about the loss.
Well, for a child to be shot with one of those rifles means that that child's body could be split. That child's
Yes.
different parts of their bodies could come completely off. I have no idea how parents who have to go to the morgue and identify their children, how do you do that? And how do you live with that? Because I know people who refuse to go to funerals, and they say, I do not want to go to the funeral. I want to remember that person as they were alive, or when they were alive. That's what I want to remember. I don't want to see the body in a casket. Everybody has their own way of dealing with death. But how can parents go and look at their child after they've been blown apart by a rifle?
Well,
How
it
can
would
they
be
live with that?
horrible. It would be horrible, Pastor. I understand what you're saying. The only way they would be able to identify their own children because of the damage that the shooting of them with a rifle creates would be whatever clothing they had put on them in the morning when they dressed them for school.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the man who actually was the murderer? They were saying, again, we're hearing that these individuals email or write notes to people that are close to them saying what they're going to do. They may not give all the details. They may not say where it's going to happen, but they're saying people are going to die today, or I'm going to die today, or I'm feeling suicidal.
Yes.
You know, it's almost like a copycat. They're all beginning to do that. And it's almost like they go into this situation, they're killing other people, and then how they think, and I guess they're not thinking correctly, but how they think they're going to be able to get out of there. In my thinking today, the way that I am, hopefully sane, that I cannot envision myself hurting other people and waiting for the police to come and hurt me. But this is the mindset of people who want to die by suicide by cop. Could you explain what that is?
Well, that's only putting themselves in a position so that somebody else would shoot them and they wouldn't have to shoot themselves. And they may have informed their mothers, their fathers, whomever in their family that was their intention.
And the other thing is, I know there were a couple shootings where the shooter had threatened members of the family, and one would want to ask the question, how much does the family really know? Because they have been observing their children or their loved ones. They've got to see that something is off. They've got to see that something is wrong. And I as a parent, when you look at your children and let's say they do something and you reflect, why didn't I see this? I think we do see it, that something is going to happen or could happen or has happened. But our love for them has us close up and not be willing to acknowledge that something is desperately wrong with my child.
Well, I have to admit that because of my age, Pastor, that when my children were small, those kinds of things were not happening in the school, in the houses that some of them lived in. I am not aware of somebody buying a gun, buying a rifle, and threatening to kill someone so that they can be killed themselves because they want to commit suicide but can't actually do it. but they're willing to allow someone else to shoot them and kill them. When my children were young, that was not happening in those days. And it did not happen in your day either, when your mother raised you.
No, because I'm about 10 years younger than you. But Eric, who is sitting in the studio, who doesn't want to come on because I think he's a little bit intimidated by the quality of the conversation that we're having right now. He wrote on Facebook that a person can buy an AR-15 for $400 to $1,000. And I have heard in some of these reports that these assailants have had more than one gun. They have more than one gun, or their family members have more than one guns, and for some reason, some way, they found access. They were able to find access to these guns, and they could just choose whichever one they want to choose. And again, we have to find a way to bring Eric on because he's typing a mile a minute here on Facebook, and I can't read everything that he's writing and talk to you at the same time because you both are putting too much of a demand on my intellect here, just trying to keep up with you. It's a lot. And then Eric, who's half the capacity of you and is thinking, it's still hard to read all of his stuff. So I'm going to implore on him one more time. I mean, Eric is on your board. I don't know why he's so intimidated and afraid of you.
He's not afraid of me. He's equal. He's not afraid of me. But I want to say one more thing about the shootings that have happened.
Yes.
And that is that just recently, the mother of the 6-year-old who came in to the school with a gun and shot his teacher.
Yes.
The mother has now been arrested and she's going to court.
Yes,
because she allowed her child to put his hands on her gun and bring her gun to the wrong place.
Right. That gun was supposed to be put away. It's supposed to be locked up. Yeah.
Should have been in a locked position. I know when I had guns, I put them in places that were locked, that could not be opened, could not be accessed by anyone except me.
So I heard the term that you just used. You said not when you had a gun. You said, and Eric can't hear this, but you said when I had guns. And I was thinking the other day, would I want to own a gun? And my head goes back and forth. And I said to myself yesterday, maybe it's because of all that's going on, I just would not want that responsibility. And Louise, to be honest with you, even if somebody was attacking me, I don't think that I would want to or could pull the trigger. I could not pull the trigger and kill another person. Although a lot of people are buying guns because they're afraid that somebody's going to hurt them and they will pull that trigger. It would be very difficult for me to pull the trigger and kill somebody, even if they were coming after me.
Well, I didn't have guns for the purpose of shooting other people, but what I did have guns for, and what I was given permission for in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, was I had the ability to teach.
To train and teach, yeah.
Train and teach other people how to use their guns. That I was teaching police officers, pastors, dentists, doctors, nurses, teachers, how to use a gun that they wanted to be allowed to have in their home under the right circumstances.
There was a period of time in my life back in the 80s and 90s where I was thinking of securing my license to carry. But at this point, I just don't at 74, I just don't see the need. I just could not. I would ask Eric the question, if he had a gun and somebody was attacking him or threatening him, could he use it? But I can't bring him into the conversation because he's sitting on the other side of the room. And Louise, I don't know why you do this to people. They just feel so intimidated by your intellect and your knowledge and the way you talk.
Well, I don't think that I'm intimidating people. I'm responding to questions that you are raising. And I think that Eric is aware of everything I might be saying as well.
Well, I sometimes on a Sunday morning when I'm preaching, sometimes after the service, I get a sense that I really want to speak to a couple of people and speak into their lives. And, I feel that I need to speak into Eric's life and say, Eric, get over here. Get on this broadcast.
I have seen Eric walk over to where you are standing after service. So I think that might happen occasionally.
Okay, so there's something else I wanted to ask you. And it was, I think, about this. I'm losing it, and I'll just keep going here until I can bring that other topic up. I have a friend. On every Tuesday, I do a broadcast from 9 to 10 with the three young men. It's Dr. Stephen Davis, Pastor Randy Neighbors, who is from Nashville, Tennessee,
Yes.
and myself. And I had asked him about the shooting in Tennessee, the school in Tennessee that was shot up, and it really bothered him because his denomination is the same denomination of the school and church, where the pastor's daughter, the pastor's young toddler, was shot at that school.
Right.
And that person, what in the published reports, it said that person, the shooter, wanted to shoot the pastor, but went for his child instead.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So there are children in our city, in other cities around the country, and college students, right? There's high school students, children, and college students.
Yes.
Who, when they leave their house, or when that mother or father or grandparent drop that child off to school, there is no guarantee that you'll ever see that child again. How can you go to work? How can you return home with that emotion? It's again, for parents who drive their children to church, to school, they're driving them to school because they want their children to be safe. They feel they're safer in their car than on a bus. But Louise, that's not true.
Right.
Because it's when they go into the school, and the children and the teenagers and the college students are not feeling safe. They're not feeling safe.
Well, some of them are feeling safe in some locations. We're not sure which locations are fearful at the moment. But we have heard, according to the news, where some terrible things have happened to some children and young students that should not have happened. It's illegal. It should not have happened. They should not have been put in a bad situation. But we thank God, I thank God that it hasn't happened in all of the programs, all of the schools, all of the colleges, all of the locations that we have been hearing about in the news.
Well, I for one, if my children were going to school, whether it's public or private, I would not have that sense that just because I drove them to school, I used to drive my son Aaron to Waltham every day to go to a private school, and at the time, I had the confidence that he was in a better environment and a safer environment. I would not feel that way today. I would want to stay in school all day and to help keep him safe. The other thing is, Louise, when two things, when the children undergo training, right, preparation for an active shooter in their school, what does that do to the child who goes through a training? You know, they have to go into the rooms, they have to lock the doors or barricade the doors. One police officer was saying yesterday to a group of young people, he was talking on a news report. He said, if you're in a situation like that, you need to first try to get away. If you can, get away, get out of the building, get away. Secondly, they said, the second thing is, first is get away. The second thing is to, if you can't get away, hide. Go into a place, go into hiding. And if you can't hide, if you can't get away, then you have to get up and fight like heck, because he's going to take you out anyway. He said, you've got to fight. And I thought about that. And I said to myself, I probably couldn't shoot somebody or wouldn't shoot somebody, but I would fight like heck to save my life and somebody else's life. But again, when our children have to go through these exercises in preparation for an active shooter, Louise, doesn't that traumatize that child?
Well, it might give them some interest at some locations and not frighten them, but it also could frighten them in other locations. We don't know what's going to happen or what the attitude is going to be and how they're going to feel about things. And I'm not sure what the advantage of training a child about being careful of someone coming at you with a gun, because I think it's a horrible thing that could possibly happen to any child. I have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren now, and that could happen to these wonderful members of my family that never could happen to my children in those years.
Right. So I would assume that when these children are undergoing the training in school in preparation for a shooter, that the school has to write a letter to the parents to let the parents know that on this day at this time, we're having a training for our entire school, because the teachers as well as the children need to undergo the training. That also would shake me up to even hear that this has to happen. So I was going to ask Larry Ellison, who is a detective here in Boston,
right,
if he would come to our church and do an active shooters training for the church. And I had suggested to him that we bring some additional churches in so he could speak to a group of churches at the same time. He had a different response than what I thought he was going to have. He said, yes, I will do the active shooters training, but he said, I need to do it at each individual church. I shouldn't do it collectively with everybody. And I said, what, Louise? Eric is sitting over there talking, he's texting me all this stuff, and he's talking over there. I'm not listening to him. If he has something to say, he needs to come on the broadcast and work like you and I are working. So anyway, what was I saying? Eric, what was I saying? Eric, what was I saying? Larry Ellison. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. You didn't have to come on to do that. Larry said he needs to do it in each church.
Individual church.
Yeah, and I said, why? He said, because every church is different. Every room is different. Every circumstance is different. Some might have cameras, some don't have cameras. But I do hear that, but I still think it would be great to bring everybody together for an orientation so that they can meet Larry and Larry can present to them what he would like to present in their individual churches. Because
Yes,
we might be able to get 10 or 15 pastors together who may not be thinking of this, and then connect them directly to Larry. Then Larry can set up the appointments. I think that's a better way than just
yeah.
us doing it ourselves.
I agree because I know Larry and I've met him in the past, and I'd like very much to have us do something at our church. And I'd be happy to offer some opportunity myself at the church when you do such a thing. It sounds good to me.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking of it. And the other thing is that I have started writing, working on a conference, of a 7-day conference. Here I go again, saying 7 full days, 7-day conference on bringing peace to our city. Addressing the violence, not stopping it, but addressing the violence. And I want to start on a Sunday, go all the way until Saturday, doing a 1-hour broadcast each day, so people can tune into the conference rather than inviting people to have to come out to the church, because I'm hoping that we would receive more of a response if people can watch it live or know where to find it, than trying to get everybody in here, because there are so many different people who have so many different plans who want to address this, that we need to collect a lot of these plans and sift them together. And there's so many different facets. Mental health is one of the issues, that one of the major issues. And sometimes when I hear people talk about the mental health concern regarding the shootings, some people, I don't feel this way. Some people feel that to mention mental health is like saying you're offering an excuse for why the people did it. And I don't think that that's why I want mental health to be one of the 7 contents in this event, this conference. I think that we've got to figure out how to see things ahead of time, how families can see it, how teachers can see it, how coaches can see it. And we should not be afraid to report on what we've heard or seen. Let me give you an example. I was in the studio, received a call from another state, and the person who called has been calling the station. And they were saying they wanted to kill themselves, and they were in a restaurant, and that they had a gun, and that they were going to kill people in the restaurant. And I said, Renee, is this for real? And she said, well, this person's been calling and calling. And so I took the phone and I tried to talk with this person, to try to talk them down and make some suggestions regarding getting some help. And they were saying that I need money, I need to buy food. But again, I wasn't going to wire somebody money that I didn't know. I wasn't going to do that. So Renee was making suggestions as to places in this city, this town, where this person can go and seek help. And then they were very angry with me because I was offering help rather than sending money across the phone lines. He said, I'm going to kill the people in this restaurant, then I'm going to kill myself. So I stayed on the phone with this person for quite a while. And then I called the police in that particular state. And it took me a while to have to transition from providing help to now call the police. And in my brain, what was happening is that I remember some stories, mental health, where people were going through a mental health crisis.
Right.
The police were called and they end up killing the person. And so I had to work that through in my head. I had to say, is that going to happen here, that this person is going to die as a result of my telephone call? Or is this person really going to shoot other people and then take their own life? And I made the intentional decision that I'd rather do something than do nothing. And so I called the police. gave all the information, and gave the phone number out so they can trace it or track it. And I left it alone, and I asked if they would call us back and just let us know what happened. But that was just one. That was just one incident. That drained me, Louise.
I know, but
I was conflicted.
the fact of the matter, the advantage that you had of passing that information on to the police was that it was happening in another location, not in Boston, Massachusetts, where you're located.
Right. Well, had it been Boston, if I could have gotten the person to give me more information, more detail, it would have been a whole different story. But again, in another state, in another town, with a person you do not know, and
Right.
again, today we can't take any chances. When people start talking about hurting themselves and hurting other people, they may, if they're joking, let them suffer the consequences of joking. Try to find the help that they need over against backing away and saying this person's not serious, especially when they call you and they keep you on the phone for 2 hours or 3 hours. There's got to be something really happening with a person.
Right. And I want to say, because of my 50 years of working with the Department of Mental Health, that it's not true that everyone that speaks about mental illness has a mental illness. They may not be mentally ill. They may be using it as an excuse, but it may not be their actual condition. There may be other people with a condition who are in trouble, but do not have a gun, do not plan to threaten to shoot themselves. Because sometimes the people who are mentally ill who decide to kill themselves do it in a very quiet, private way.
Well, Louise, with the number of shootings across the United States, and I have never thought this through yet, but do we have people copying other people? You know, I went out, this person went out in a blaze of glory in their mind. I want to go out this way. I can't kill myself. It seems like this is happening. It seems like every week we're hearing about it.
Yeah, I agree that that's a possibility. It's a possibility.
And Louise, we're only hearing about the mass shootings. There are people shooting people that it's not receiving the coverage that the mass shooters are receiving. And I'm just wondering sometimes, how does a grown man or a grown woman, how do they choose in elementary school to work out their brokenness issues? What's the symbolism of children? What is the symbolism of children taking children out? I don't understand that.
Well, I don't have the information because I have not interviewed anyone who is under those circumstances talking about shooting in a school. So I do not know what their reason for doing such a thing is about, because I haven't spoken with anyone. And it could happen. We could get some more information at some point when someone does talk about it and does admit their problem and is collected by the police with a mental health counselor to take them in for treatment before something terrible occurs.
What I would like to happen is that I would like some expert, some sociologist, some psychologist, some people who deal with people who are struggling mentally, I would like to have an analysis done of the mass shootings in the United States over the past, let's say, 10 years or 7 years, to collectively look at the entire thing and look at the aspects that are common in each of them. Like, there's a whole group that are going to schools. We used to hear about people, when we would hear about these shootings, it was usually an employee going back to their job and taking out the lead person, the employer. You know, they used to say, this person's gone postal. It was happening, right? That's not the main thing that's happening now. If we don't study this and come up with a profile as to what's happening in these people's lives, having a school drill is not the only thing that we should be doing. That protects after someone's been activated. We need to study this entire thing, and unless we do that and come up with some directives and some understanding, this happens. I know it happened during the Charles Stewart case here in Boston, when that white male killed his wife and unborn child and said a black man did it. There was a report that came out of the police department. There was a report written about what happened, and they made recommendations as to how to move forward in the future and how they handle the community, how they verify what people are saying. It was a well-written document. We need the same kind of study going on about what's happening in our country. This is a nationwide crisis that needs to be examined, because we needed to be examining what was happening in Chicago and Baltimore with all those black young people killing each other. Now we have the school massacres. All of this needs to be studied to try to figure out what's happening in our country and what are the remedies, my opinion.
Yes, I agree with you. And I would want to make contact with someone in the State Department of Mental Health who is willing to do some of the work to develop the information and know what's going on and what could be avoided in terms of what is going on.
You know, something, while you were talking, something else hit me, and I am not sure. I wonder if some of the shootings could have been initiated by people who are using illegal or legal drugs that have caused them to become depressed or think outside of their heads, you know? Maybe some of the stuff that people are injecting into their bodies, like maybe there needs to be a checking of their blood, right, to determine was there anything in their system that could have contributed to the way that they're thinking, because this is not normal.
That's right, but that happened this week too. A young man was arrested and taken to court because he had been using fentanyl, and he had threatened to do something, and there was anxiety and concern about it possibly happening. And thank God it didn't happen, but they took him to court. Now, will he be released from court or will he be incarcerated? We don't know that yet. Don't know that yet.
There is somebody in the studio who just came on. As you see at the bottom of your screen, it says there are 3 people broadcasting. We can only see 2 of them, but there's somebody who wants to make a comment, and they're not showing themselves yet because they may be ashamed of how they look. Visitor, caller, encroaching upon our time. What would you like to say? I can hear. I'm sorry. What did you say, Eric?
If I put the sound on, it'll.
If you have the headphone on in your phone, it will stop the sound from coming out. So Eric is going to see. I have to teach him the technology, Louise. He's actually in. He's not showing himself because he's not dressed accordingly. Go ahead.
Oh, he's doing fine.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I see
So-
his name is on the screen. Ah, there I see you, Eric.
Cool. So I was doing some research here, and you guys mentioned the postal shooting, and that term came to be in 1986 when the first mass shooting at a post office happened.
1986?
Yeah, 1986, August 20th.
Well, I'm sure that Eric has done a little research on what he's been hearing you and I talk about. And he's correct in what he just said.
The other thing I see is you were talking about the last 10 years of mass shootings. Since the pandemic of 2020 to current, it has risen like by crazy numbers. 2019, there was 417. 2020, there was 610. And it has gone up every year since that.
I have heard a lot of people talk about the pandemic, and they talk about the impact of the pandemic on people. And sometimes I thought they were using it as an excuse for why certain things are happening. But there has to be a correlation between what happened during the pandemic of people being isolated and locked up and what's happening now. But I can't make that correlation. I can't make that connection.
So we're in April, and there's been 146 mass shootings so far, and we're only, 4 months into the year.
Okay, your hand is in the way of your face. Thank you. Thank you. It's important that we see your face because Eric, I know that you've done some review of what we've been talking about so that you could tell us something that was true. So thank you very much, Eric. If you have anything else to make a comment about, I would appreciate it. Because I have a few minutes left.
Excuse me, Louise. Are you saying that we need Eric to help us with this broadcast? That you and I are not capable of communicating this information without his help?
No, I'm just saying that he's sitting right next to you in the same studio, and there's no reason why we can't take advantage of what he's talking about.
Okay. We actually have 2 minutes.
2
So,
minutes.
I'm going to give you the last word.
Okay, I want to thank you, co-host, and I want to thank Eric, my friend and person who's on the board with me with Massachusetts Cure, which is a very important prison reform organization. And I think that what we've talked about is unfortunate because it's so true and it's so sad. And we would like there to be no longer any shooting of children, shooting in schools, shooting in workplaces, shooting on the street, in automobiles, wherever these things are happening, it's horrible. And I am saying that you and I and Eric should pray and ask God to find a way to help us to stop what's going on that is so bad and so negative in this world. Thank you. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.